How's it going, Thieves fans? This past weekend, we had another big week for 100 Thieves Esports. We got to watch the LA Thieves play a match. We had two League of Legends matches. We had multiple 100T Rivals matches. And then we had a Valorant match as well as Apex Legends. So, really, we got to see every single 100 Thieves Esports team play at least one match this weekend. To start off the video, I want to talk about the League of Legends series that we got to see, and they started off against Cloud9. That was their first match this weekend, and they ended up winning that one 1-0. They looked pretty comfortable towards the end. There were a lot of back and forth fights, several times where the Thieves ended up winning a couple big team fights that helped lead them to that victory. And then the next series we had was up against Team Liquid, which things started off really well for the Thieves in that one. They looked very, very comfortable to start off the series. And then we lost several team fights that just went the way of Team Liquid and went their way pretty handedly. We kind of got waved out, I would say, several players down all at the same time. And once that kind of happened, it seemed like the tides had turned against the Thieves. And inevitably, Team Liquid ended up winning that one in a pretty convincing fashion after that. So I don't know too much about League of Legends, so I don't want to try and speak too much on it. But it was very interesting to see how quick the tables turned in that second series, especially when watching the Thieves and C9 match was kind of my first time really watching an entire League of Legends match all the way through and seeing how back and forth it really was that whole time. Once we got to the Team Liquid match on the weekend, the things that happened were just kind of so crazy and they happened so quick that it looked like the Thieves were in control the whole time. And then all of a sudden, it was one wave of kills that completely flipped the game on its head. So that was very interesting to see. Obviously, it sucked that the Thieves ended up losing that one. But the Thieves League of Legends team did end up going 1-1 on the weekend, which I don't feel like is that bad, especially if Team Liquid is a pretty solid League of Legends team. Like I said, you guys can let me know about that in the comment section down below. I'm still trying to learn more about League of Legends as a whole. Hey, Editor Zeke here. Just wanted to pop in real quick because I realized that I did not mention anything about Apex Legends. So I wanted to throw this in there so that way it didn't go completely missed out for anybody who does care about Apex Legends. That was the one game that we didn't really get to watch much of on the watch parties this weekend because it was going at the same time as Marvel Rivals. And Marvel Rivals was a tournament, so that was kind of more of the priority for me. But the Thieves did end up finishing in second place out of this weekend. So that was really cool to see. They were top five, I believe, most of their matches. And out of the six matches, the last one, they were able to get first, which was what brought them up to that final second place finish. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up so that way anybody who was anticipating the Apex talk didn't miss out on it. And I apologize that I didn't get to do it in the regular video format, but got it thrown in there now. So hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. Peace. The next series I want to talk about is the 100 Thieves Valorant series. They took on Loudgg, where they ended up winning it 2-1, but it was definitely more tense than it probably should have been or what I would have anticipated it being, especially hearing that Loud had just recently lost to 2G, which is a tier 2 team from what I've been told. So I would have expected things to be a little more comfortable out of the Thieves, but we still ended up closing out the series, like I said. But we started off on Haven, where I thought that these were going to look really good, knowing that that's kind of been our best map so far. And that was our map pick. We ended up losing that one 6-13. Not great for us, knowing what we had up next, which was Icebox, and that was Loud's pick. And then if we were to get to the game three, which we did, was Split. And that has been a map that has not looked great for us. So losing that Haven 13-6 was not ideal. Loud just looked really, really comfortable on it. That takes us to the Icebox, where, like I said, the Thieves ended up winning this one. We ended up having a very close map on our hands. Thieves were able to clutch up in the end, though, with a couple big plays from Cryo. He really had an insane series this weekend, so shout out to him, kind of just keeping the team in it. The Thieves ended up winning that one 13-11, so like I said, it was really, really close. But that took us to the Split, which was the third and final map of the series. And despite the fact that this was not our best map, or I feel like has not been our best map, The Thieves ended up closing this one out fairly handedly. They won this one 13-8, which obviously is better than the 13-11. Now, I wasn't really expecting us to perform that well on this map, but like I said, the Thieves kind of iced up a little bit and were able to take this one in a fairly comfortable fashion. There were moments here and there, obviously, that were tense, but we're called Heart Attack Thieves for a reason. What do you expect at that point when it comes to really any of 100 Thieves esports? That brings us to the LA Thieves series, where they took on the Vancouver Surge. And this one was a pretty comfortable win for the Thieves. There wasn't a lot that Surge was able to do to kind of make the Thieves waver. The closest map was the Skyline map one, 250 to 183. And that one definitely could have been closed out a little sooner than what it was on the side of Thieves. They took their feet off of the gas pedal, or they took their foot off the gas pedal, I should say. And that allowed the Surge to kind of make their way back into it a little bit. But then the Thieves were able to close it out with a couple hill holds back to back. Like I said, putting us up 250 to 183 and putting us up 1-0 in the series. That's where we go into the brand new map dealership on S&D. This was our first time seeing the Thieves play it, and they looked pretty comfortable on it, actually. The start of it wasn't the best. Vancouver kind of got off to a hot start, but the Thieves were able to rally back and ended up closing that one out 6-3, again in a little more of a convincing fashion. I didn't know what to expect out of this dealership because this map is a lot more of a fast-paced map. And I feel like the Thieves, when it comes to search and destroy, are more of a slow and methodical team. But they looked really comfortable on it. And I know that the talent that they have is more than enough to be able to hang with teams, especially like Surge, who like to play very fast. So I think that's why things kind of went our way a little bit, was we were able to play a little slower when we needed to, but we're more than comfortable with playing at a faster pace. I still don't know how much I love the dealership map as an S&D map, but it is what it is. We're just going to have to see if this becomes a new comfortable map for the Thieves, or if this is one that they're just trying to kind of add into the rotation so that way they're comfortable with it when it comes to the next major tournament. That leads us into the map 3, which is the protocol control, where we ended up closing out this series. And again, pretty handed map here. Thieves won this one 3-1, and there really wasn't a lot that Surge was able to do. They had their second round where they were able to get the win, and outside of that, Thieves were just kind of in control at that point. No pun intended. Envoy had a fantastic series this weekend. He ended up finishing the entire series with a 1.29 KD, and he had 63 kills on the day. So Envoy was kind of doing everything you needed him to. Scrap was the next one behind him at 64 kills on the day. So technically ahead of him in kills, but KD wise, he was a 1.28. And then Hydra 1.15 out of him, and Ghosty was the only one to go negative with a 0.82. Now that we got the shorter matches out of the way, we can talk about the Marvel Rivals tournament. This was one that the Thieves fans, I would say, definitely expected the Thieves to win, and they looked very, very good coming into this tournament. Definitely looking like the best team in North America, and they started off playing up against the Magnets, which this one was a lot closer than what I think people would have expected it to be. But Magnets actually had a really good showing in the bracket, and the Thieves ended up winning that one 3-2. Very, very close series. Like I said, probably wouldn't have expected it, but that was the upper bracket semifinals. So you have to give credit to the Magnets because, like I said, they ended up having a really good run in the tournament, and they gave the Thieves a run for their money. It wasn't the best showing from the Thieves, I feel like, but they were still able to close it out, which brought them to the upper bracket finals. In the upper bracket finals, they faced off against none other than Sentinels. It seems like the Thieves and Sentinels are destined to have a rivalry no matter what game it is. If there's a game that the Thieves and Sentinels both play in, it seems like we have that rivalry. And that was not the best showing from us. We ended up losing that one 3-0. Sentinels just looked on a whole nother level. The way that the Sentinels team plays off of one another is so cohesive. They just do such a great job. They often play three healers, two tanks, and one damage. And I think that's very, very hard for the Thieves to counter. It's just so hard for the Thieves to get kills at that point because of how quick they're able to heal themselves or get healed by others. So, like I said, Thieves ended up losing that one 3-0. That dropped them into the lower bracket final where they ended up facing off against Shroud X. And this one was a much more comfortable win. The Thieves looked much more like themselves in this one. They ended up winning that one 4-1. At this point, we were moved on to the best of sevens. So Thieves ended up winning that one pretty comfortably. And Shroud X is not a bad team by any means. So getting that win was really nice, knowing that, okay, now we have to play Sentinels once again in the grand finals, where Sentinels kind of just wiped the floor with us, to be blunt about it. There's really no other way to talk about it. Sentinels just absolutely smoked the Thieves, and it was very disappointing to watch, to be honest. And I know the players were very disappointed afterwards, but Sentinels, like I said, they just look on another level. It seems like they were able to kind of figure out the Thieves and were able to counter them. Sentinels was probably the team that gave the Thieves the hardest time, maybe outside of FlyQuest, when it came to leading into this tournament. So it makes sense that Sentinels were the team that the Thieves were going to have to face off against in the grand finals in order to win the entire tournament. But like I said, Sentinels just looked on another level. Their their team play and their team comp just seemed like the Thieves couldn't withstand it. A lot of times, as I said, they have those three healers, but they often have Adam Warlock who ends up being able to revive the entire team. So it seemed a lot of times when the Thieves would win a team fight, they weren't done yet. It was like they could go five or four or five people dead, even six people dead, and Sentinels would be able to revive all their players and they're right back into the fight once again. And at that point, it was just like Thieves are already weak. They would end up losing that second team fight. And now Sentinels has all the advantage because the Thieves really didn't run that Adam Warlock very often. They did start trying to do it a little bit more. I was definitely curious about if the Thieves running like a dive comp would have been good to face off against a team that has three healers, just to kind of focus them. Because once they took out the healers, things became a little easier, but it was just so hard to get to the healers because the tanks did a fantastic job of taking all the damage that the Thieves were giving. So they did a great job of preventing the Thieves from getting deeper into those back lines and really putting up a huge fight. And it really seemed like every time the Thieves had a moment of just stability or even like a comfortable win or just a nice win on a round, right after that, it was like Sentinels would come back and just BTA. It was belt to ass right afterwards. Um, Sentinels just looked on a whole nother level. So congratulations to them on closing out the tournament. Thieves do finish in second place, which I don't think is a bad finish. Obviously, with how good they looked going into the tournament, I think a lot of people, the players and the fans, are a little disappointed that we couldn't end it with a win. But the Thieves look good, and I think this is going to be a big learning experience for them. I think this is going to be something that pushes them to make sure that they don't lose like this again in future tournaments. That's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, please hit that like and subscribe button. It lets me know that you guys like the content that I'm making, and it helps me figure out what you guys want to see in the future as well. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Hope to see you guys in the watch parties this coming weekend, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.